Guys, it's finally happened.
Boyinaband has been accused of a range of abuse. They also accused him of having relationships with underage fans, and they just say that he was generally extremely manipulative.
You see the drippy, I'm fitted up. Hop in my car and the giddy up. Secure the bag, yeah, I get the bus. Pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. You see the drippy, I'm fitted up. Hop in my car and the giddy up. Secure the bag, yeah, I get the bus.
Imagine a YouTuber who went from collabing with PewDiePie to suddenly vanishing off the face of the internet. Imagine a guy praised for fighting school systems, but later accused of grooming and manipulating underage fans. This same guy who was so outspoken about mental health and now turned it into his most dangerous weapon. This is David Paul Brown, better known as Boyinaband, a musician who was once everywhere. Music videos, collaborations, viral anthems, and then in one night he was gone. No video or update since the last 5 years. Just a channel sitting there with 2.7 million subscribers, and its creator is nowhere to be found. Which brings us to the most important question. Where is Boyinaband? And what happened to the victims he secretly targeted? In August 2022, the silence surrounding Boyinaband was broken. It wasn't a comeback video or a long-awaited explanation. Instead, it was a letter, a document allegedly written by a group of his former lovers, posted online on Reddit. Its arrival shattered whatever lingering sympathy or nostalgia remained for him. For years, people had wondered where Boyinaband had gone. With this letter, the question was no longer where, it became why. That's because the letter was filled with serious claims against Boyinaband, such as grooming, emotional manipulation, physical abuse, and financial control. Let's focus on the parts that mattered most. He also has a provable porn addiction, which includes him being attracted to pre-teenage girls who dress to look like children, encourages them to lose weight, and assaults. He coerced multiple young girls into being polyamorous, even if it was something they had never considered before him. He uses his depression to control girls by justifying why he treats them like garbage or playing the victim card. Over the last few years, he repeatedly mixed antidepressants and ADHD medication with whiskey and weed. The most disturbing thread was the allegation of pedophilia, a desperate attraction toward teenage girls. In one instance, the letter claims Boyinaband, then 23 years old, dated a girl who was only 17. She had first admired him as a fan when she was just 15, before the relationship began. The letter says David later highlighted her in this content, even joking about waking up next to her and seeing lyrics like, "Take me without my consent." What the victims describe as a disturbing power imbalance, he presented as entertainment for his audience. Now, on paper, the law may have blurred the lines, but morally, it was damning. But this was just a glimpse of this long-haired, red-headed evil.
Come with a little bit of luck, I can cover it up smoothly like I did with a silk quilt. What's the point of this? For the sake of art, man, point to this. Don't take it home.
Because when we read further, the letter also pointed toward dangerous addiction to porn. It also says that in recent years he mixed antidepressants or ADHD meds with whiskey and weed. For fans who once saw him as a rebel, even a champion for mental health, these revelations were impossible to reconcile. This was the same creator who spoke openly about depression, who fought to make mental health visible in space that often ignored it. His songs like Empty and his countless videos gave a voice to struggles young people couldn't put into words. The quirky outsider musician had, in the words of his alleged victims, lived a double life. Surprisingly, the allegations did not stop at attraction. The letter described instances of manipulation and abuse within relationships, both emotional and physical. Boyinaband was accused of leveraging his mental health struggles as a shield, deflecting blame by making his partners feel guilty for holding him accountable. According to the claims, when arguments broke out, he often turned the tables by presenting himself as the real victim. The letter states that he used his depression to justify his actions, treating women poorly while insisting his mental health excused it. Instead of taking responsibility, he would play the victim card, refusing to acknowledge the harm he caused. The writers argue this behavior wasn't weakness, it was manipulation, a way to silence his partners and keep control. The letter states, he uses his depression to control girls by justifying why he treats them like garbage or playing the victim card. He refuses to take any personal responsibility and constantly laments about how cruel, vindictive, callous, hurtful, and abusive the world has been towards him. It created a cycle. His partners, already vulnerable and often younger, felt trapped between caring for him and confronting the harm he caused. Now, if you look at his videos, from the looks of it, you would never be able to guess if he was able to manipulate and exploit teenage girls. Because viewers were under the dilemma of his most popular song, Don't Stay in School, released in early 2015, the song had attracted 48 million views, making Boyinaband one of YouTube's most recognizable music creators.
Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. That's insane. That's absolutely insane.
It wasn't just another YouTube song. It was a bold statement, a harsh attack on the modern education system packed into 3 minutes of rap. At a time when YouTube was full of Minecraft parodies and joke songs, this track hit hard. Suddenly, Boyinaband wasn't just another musician online, he was someone calling for change, and millions paid attention. The song blew up quickly. For weeks, it was all over YouTube. Reaction channels analyzed it. Teachers argued about it.
Is only looking at going to high school, not college, then that person is right. But if you look beyond the school, and if you look at going to college afterwards, so you're going to need all those things that, according to the presenter, are not necessary.
And students used it as proof that their complaints about school were real. When the hype died down, Don't Stay in School had gone beyond YouTube. It became a symbol of a generation fed up with classrooms that felt old, useless, and restrictive.
But calculator with you every day. They think it's not the kids. The parents are the problem. But if you taught the kids to parent, that's the problem. It's not then. I'm only fluent in this language. Considering us the rest of the world.
The song's appeal was clear. Boyinaband's lyrics spoke to a common frustration. School makes you memorize facts you'll never need, while skipping the skills you actually need in adult life like taxes, mental health, and survival. His anger felt real, relatable, and rebellious, especially to young people. And he didn't sound like a teacher giving a lecture, he sounded like one of them. Older, but still hurt by the same system.
Maybe try some leadership. Could we discuss domestic abuse and get the facts or how to help my depressed friend with a mental state? No. Learn mental maths, because you won't have a calculator with you every day. They say it's not the kids, the parents.
But under the energy of the song, there was a contradiction. The same man who mocked school for teaching useless facts had built his career through learning. Behind the bold rap was a musician who studied production, tried different genres, and spent countless hours improving his craft.
And as you can hear, now it's multiple single notes being repeated instead of just the one note, but this isn't very interesting. So we're going to make it.
Don't Stay in School was a protest against education, yet it also showed what self-education can achieve. It felt rebellious, but it also blurred the line between performance and honesty. That tension didn't stop the song from blowing up, it made it bigger. People connected to it in their own ways. For teenagers trapped in classrooms, the song was an anthem. For critics of traditional schooling, it was validation. And for Boyinaband himself, it was the moment that solidified his brand. The outsider, the rule breaker, the one willing to say what others wouldn't. The viral hit also cemented his reputation as more than just a weird musician. He had always been clever with comedy.
Hi, I'm Dave from That wasn't high enough. Hi, I'm Dave from Boyinaband.com. And this is my mate Dan Bull. We made a Tony Hawk's rap that's over on his channel, so if you want to hear glitch-hoppy beats made with skateboard sounds and us rapping over them with very clever wordplay, you can click here on his enthusiastic face to check it out. Just wait here while you do that.
Always skilled at mocking industry trends,
I'm Dave from Boyinaband, terrible pun. Today I'm here to address the accusation that rapping requires no talent. Being a rapper, I'll see comments like this and this and this again and again. You know, so you'll be at a crazy party with your friend. Okay, maybe not a crazy party, you're sitting around a screen sharing YouTube videos, and someone will put on a rap song to which you'll hear someone else say, rap music, it's all the same, anyone can rap. But give them a beat and a mic and you'll get this. Oh, thanks. So to enlighten these people, I've got a little thought experiment. We have two...
But Don't Stay in School was different. It wasn't funny, it was sharp, confrontational, and serious. It felt like the first time the mask came off, showing anger that had been building for years. And that anger started long before YouTube. The song's success changed everything. Boyinaband used to be known only in small circles, but now millions knew who he was. His channel grew fast, and he worked with more creators. He was no longer just the guy helping others with music, he was the one leading with his own voice. But with that new fame came pressure. Fans started looking to him not just for fun songs, but for advice and honesty. In 2018, he collaborated with Jaiden Animations on Empty, a haunting piece about anorexia and bulimia. The lyrics didn't dance around the subject, they confronted it head-on, weaving food imagery into metaphors about control, shame, and exhaustion.
Overwhelming, and I hope no one can tell, because the numbers keep decreasing. The ordeal is becoming routine. Check. Arms back, neck, thighs, suffering, and pierce my thighs.
The video paired Jaiden's personal honesty with Boyinaband's ability to give musical weight to difficult topics, earning praise for its courage and sensitivity. Around the same period, he also teamed up with The Odd Ones Out for Life is Fun. On the surface, the track sounded like a bouncy, upbeat comedy song, but the structure was more complex. James, The Odd Ones Out, sang about happiness, optimism, and simple joys, while Boyinaband's verses undercut the positivity with reminders of hardship, decay, and futility.
If I'm lucky,
Neither of those will make you happy. Me, but
I don't choose what I pursue.
you're a slave to people born richer than you.
Then screw it.
The contrast created a layered effect. Younger audiences could laugh at the back and forth, while older listeners could recognize the darker undercurrent. It was entertainment, but it also hinted at Boyinaband's worldview, one shaped by mental health struggles and an inability to accept surface-level positivity without digging deeper. These songs showed that Boyinaband was changing. He wasn't just making jokes about music styles anymore. His songs became more open and personal, mixing performance with real feelings. Fans weren't just listening for fun, they saw him dealing with the same problems they faced, like school, mental health, and life's pressures.
Maybe I shouldn't be enjoying myself.
I wondered how it would feel going through this kind of reliving it.
It's not really reliving it, it's more looking back on what I felt like during it.
The pressure only grew as his collaborations expanded. Working with Storytime animators, with PewDiePie, with creators across the globe, he continued to produce hits. Yet the shadow of his 2015 anthem lingered. And once you've revealed yourself as someone willing to dismantle the system, every silence, every misstep, every contradiction becomes amplified. But that pressure didn't just create bigger songs, it created cracks. His reputation grew, but so did the controversies. And if this letter was not published by some courageous women, then we wouldn't have discovered his true nature. And the deeper you read, the more disturbing the picture became. It wasn't just emotional harm, the letter described patterns of control that reached into every part of his relationships. The document also referenced financial abuse. It alleged that he would rent accommodations, like Airbnbs, which left partners dependent on him for shelter. With his income and reputation, he allegedly held the financial advantage, using it to tighten his grip on those around him. The relationships, the letter suggested, weren't built on equality, they were built on control. The most striking element of the letter wasn't just the severity of the claims, but the number of voices behind it. It wasn't one individual speaking out, it wasn't even two. The letter framed itself as a collective statement, written by multiple women, large enough in number to feel impossible to dismiss. Double digits. A chorus of people who claimed to have endured similar patterns of behavior, finally uniting to expose him. However, the letter had weaknesses, cracks that skeptics seized upon. The account that posted it was a burner, quickly abandoned after its release. No evidence of criminal behavior was provided, leaving the claims in a space that was serious but not provable. For defenders of Boyinaband, this ambiguity was all they needed. For critics, the sheer volume of accusations outweighed the lack of hard proof. Regardless of where one stood, the impact on his reputation was immediate. His subreddit is locked. Old collaborators scrubbed videos.
I just started getting a bunch of tweets from people saying they couldn't access the video where I called him out. And after checking my email, sure enough, I had got a copyright strike. If I go to the video...
Mentions of him became rare, almost taboo. Even before the legal system could act, if it ever would, the court of public opinion had already reached a verdict. He was guilty in the only arena that mattered to his career, the internet. The letter reframed everything that had come before. His openness about mental health, once seen as bravery, now read like manipulation.
I was never taught what laws there are. I was never taught what laws there are. Let me repeat, I was not taught the laws for the country I live in.
His long silences, his disappearances, his distance from collaborators, all of it looked different under the shadow of the allegations. Fans who had once begged for his return now questioned whether they'd been complicit in enabling a predator. What made the allegations uniquely devastating was that they played on the same qualities that had made him famous.
It's your boy, Male Feminist here. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the worldwide phenomena BTS. BTS are the biggest, or at least...
His accessibility, his relatability, his connection to young fans.
Some for the people on the block to black out and rock to give you what you need like Papa Who Shot Ya.
He had built a career on being approachable, on breaking down the walls between creator and audience. And now the letter claimed that he had used that very accessibility as a weapon. In the months after its release, there was no rebuttal. No video, no statement, no attempt to reclaim his image. For some, that silence was an admission. For others, it was a refusal to dignify accusations that couldn't be proven. But for the broader YouTube community, it was enough. Boyinaband had gone from a missing figure to a disgraced one. What the letter truly accomplished was not the destruction of a career that had already been crumbling. It destroyed the possibility of a redemption arc.
Since March, and I haven't even freaking tweeted since mid-May, and it's weird because I've been having the most success I've ever had in my life and the least motivation to do anything. When I was planning to make this video, I kept thinking...
Before 2022, fans still held out hope for a comeback, a new project, a re-emergence. After the letter, that hope evaporated. Even if he released music again, even if he collaborated with others, the shadow of those words would hang over every beat, every lyric, every public appearance. The allegations did not just tarnish his name, they rewrote his legacy. And without a response, without clarity, the story remains frozen in this moment, a narrative defined not by Boyinaband himself, but by the voices of those who claim to know the truth. But the same fame that made him a hero also gave him power. Power he would later be accused of using to exploit those closest to him. That pressure eventually became too much. The music stopped, and the silence that followed became his disappearance. That growing pressure and controversy eventually collapsed into silence. 5 years. In the digital world, that's an eternity. For a creator once everywhere, in collabs, live streams, and trending music videos, this silence wasn't just absence, it was ghosting. Boyinaband didn't leave behind a farewell video or a carefully worded goodbye. He didn't even offer the half-hearted taking a break post that fans have grown accustomed to. Instead, he simply vanished. One day his uploads slowed to a trickle, and then, without explanation, the lights went out. At first, the absence was subtle. Fans told themselves it was a break, and it did make sense because musicians often retreat to work on new projects, giving the assumption that he was writing, recording, producing, or preparing for a grand return. But weeks turned into months, and the silence was loud. His collaborations, once a constant, stopped appearing on other creators' channels. His once steady social media presence decreased into nothingness. He became famous for turning complex issues into viral songs. Don't Stay in School made him a voice for frustrated students, while tracks like Life is Fun and Empty showed his mix of humor and honesty.
Beautiful day, the sun's shining in a beautiful day, so let's take a shower, brush my teeth, and...
Life is ultimately meaningless.
And bald eagles aren't bald. Uncontrollable sobbing. We all bumpin' this shit all year long. I have learned more on my spare time watching YouTube videos than in school. I know this is old, but great point, Dave. The disappearance was shocking because of how active he had been. In the mid-2010s, Boyinaband wasn't just another YouTuber, he was a connective thread in the platform's musical fabric. If a non-musician wanted to release a song, odds were good that Boyinaband had been involved.
Yo, what up, Doc? It's COD, dude. About to bat a battlefield back to 1942 till the entire world plays.
Either producing, writing, or quietly shaping it behind the scenes.
Sort of what we got going on. What makes this song kick?
Well, the kick helps.
if we let's jump into the chorus, for instance. So yeah, we've got the beat here, and loaded up. Just got everything in Kong. Got a nice.
He wasn't only an artist in his own right, but also a collaborator, a behind-the-scenes figure making sure YouTube's biggest music moments didn't feel amateur. He helped Odd Ones Out create Life is Fun, where his darker verses balance James's cheerful tone.
First, we needed an idea.
We got a few ideas. What's the one we're working on at the moment? It's about a guy who tries to be happy because the feeling of existentialism in the world ending and the fact that he's going to die one day is like forcing him to be happy and cheerful.
But I'll get out of the house! Get on the road, top down, hands out!
Oh, I wasn't partying too potty, you know? I wasn't partying.
But I'll get out of the house! Get on the road, top down, hands out!
That was great.
With Jaiden Animations, he worked on Empty, turning her personal story about eating disorders into a powerful song. He also wrote and performed on iDubbbz's Asian Jake Paul, one of the most famous diss tracks on YouTube. And with PewDiePie, he co-created Congratulations, a track that became an anthem during the subscriber war with T-Series. In each case, Boyinaband's skill gave the songs polish and weight, helping other creators shine. So when he disappeared, it wasn't just his own channel that felt the void. It was as though a whole genre of YouTube lost one of its anchors, leaving his millions of fans debating in the comments section. Some pointed to his long battle with depression, a struggle he'd never hidden. Boyinaband had spoken candidly about therapy, medication, and the weight of living with mental illness. I slept through 2 therapy appointments. Sleeping pattern has been the past month. This week I didn't sleep through it. I click with my therapist, which apparently is one of the best scientific identifiers of a therapist being effective, according to her. It wasn't hard to imagine that the overwhelming demands of content creation had finally pushed him to a breaking point. Others theorized burnout. After years of constant uploads, collaborations, and the pressure to outdo himself, perhaps he simply couldn't keep pace with the internet anymore. There were also darker ideas about why he vanished. His sudden disappearance came with unproven claims and rumors in small online groups. At first, they didn't make much sense, but over time, some details started to become clearer. For now, though, his absence stood on its own. A man once known for being loud and rebellious had gone totally quiet, and that quietness became its own message. In many ways, Boyinaband's exit was the inverse of how he had lived online. He was a creator who overshared, who blurred the boundaries between private life and public platform. His struggles weren't just hinted at, they were written into his lyrics, posted on his feeds, shared in vulnerable moments that his audience, many of them young and impressionable, devoured. It was part of his appeal, but also part of his danger. By inviting his audience into his darkest corners, he created a parasocial dependency. His pain became their concern. His posts about sleepless nights or crushing loneliness weren't just diary entries, they were emotional weight placed onto the shoulders of fans. And when he suddenly disappeared, the same fans who had once comforted him were left with nothing but questions. The strangeness of it all was amplified by his age. By the time he vanished, Boyinaband was no longer the scrappy 20-something building a channel from his bedroom. He was in his 30s, an age when most people, online or not, are expected to have found some kind of stability. To see a man of that age crumble so publicly and then vanish entirely was disconcerting. It blurred the line between personal crisis and public collapse. Looking back, his silence doesn't seem like a fresh start, but more like the final step in a breakdown. The signs were there. Tweets that sounded like pleas for help, live streams where he seemed worn out, and community posts showing how much he relied on strangers for approval. Many creators shine for a while, then fade away. But Boyinaband's disappearance felt different. It looked less like leaving quietly and more like a warning that something darker was happening. When fans went looking for answers, they found almost nothing. His subreddit, once a hub of activity, empty. Collaborators fell quiet about him. No one seemed willing to speak about his whereabouts, or perhaps no one truly knew. In an age where digital footprints are nearly impossible to erase, Boyinaband managed the unthinkable, to vanish into mystery. For someone so deeply tied to YouTube, this was more than unusual, it was unsettling. The power of absence is that it leaves room for imagination. Every week without news stretched the gap wider. Was he recovering? Was he hiding? Was there something he couldn't face? In this silence, hope and suspicion coexisted. Some fans hoped he'd come back with new music. better than before. Others feared the worst. And then in 2022, the silence broke. But not with Boyinaband's voice. Instead, it was shattered by the words of others. A collective letter filled with allegations that recalled the disappearance not as a mystery, but as a symptom. The man who had built his career on openness was suddenly accused of hiding the darkest secrets of all. Boyinaband's story doesn't resolve neatly. It begins with the promise of a musician who found a home on YouTube, who stood out in a sea of mediocrity by turning satire and skill into something unique. It peaks with virality, the anthem of Don't Stay in School, a song that made him the accidental spokesman for a generation's frustrations. And then it fractures. Silence replaces music. Allegation replaces applause. Whatever legacy might have been is buried under questions he never answered. What makes this story unsettling isn't just what's been said about him, but what hasn't. The internet thrives on confessions, apologies, explanations. Boyinaband gave none. He chose absence. In doing so, he forfeited control of his narrative, leaving it to be written by others. His fans, his critics, his accusers. And when you allow others to tell your story, you don't get to choose the ending. The disappearance, the letter, the silence, they all fit together now like pieces of a puzzle. Not a complete picture, but enough to suggest the shape of something darker beneath the surface. Whether every claim in that letter was true almost doesn't matter anymore. The stain remains. The uncertainty lingers. His name is no longer a brand in music, but a byword for suspicion. So what is Boyinaband's legacy? For some, it's the rebellious outsider who stood against the system. For others, it's a cautionary tale about blurred boundaries, parasocial power, and what happens when influence corrodes responsibility. But for most, it's simply absence. A hollow space where an artist once stood, now remembered more for vanishing than for creating. Will he ever return? Unlikely. The internet forgets trends, not allegations. And in that silence, perhaps the only truth we're left with is this. Boyinaband's story didn't end with a final song or a last word. It ended with nothing. And sometimes, nothing speaks louder than anything else.